Hey everybody, welcome to Meta episode number 16. This is the first of hopefully many European time zone episodes to try to talk to a bunch of the European pros. And with me today, let's go ahead and introduce everyone. First off, we have TLO, who he's sitting very still. There's a T-Rex outside his window. He doesn't want to move, but he doesn't want to not be on Meta either. How's it going, TLO?
Hey man, it's going good. Pleasure inviting me, I guess. You should say that, I think. You should say you have a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, TLO.
It's hard to speak English, you know? People should appreciate that. All those foreign players from Europe making the effort.
Well, you say that, and then I have these two guys from the Netherlands who speak better English than I do. Yos, Rhett, how's it going?
Hey man, I'm good. It's nice to be on a show that isn't in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that's good. It's like 10 p.m. for me, so not quite middle of the night. It's doable. And of course, Harstem, welcome to the show. How are you doing on this fine day?
I'm doing quite well. I'm very happy to be on finally. And,
yes.
Gonna drop some sick knowledge bombs.
Oh, I can't wait. Well, we should start right away with those sick knowledge bombs. Let's talk about Dreamhack Bucharest. We were all there. We all enjoyed it. It was awesome. What were some of your guys' favorite games? Any cool new strategies or unexpected strategies that you saw? Any kind of shifts that you were like, oh, wow?
I feel like it was overall pretty standard. We're right now at a point in the heart of this form where there's not that much development, I feel, more refinement. The game I was most impressed about was probably Tasia versus Life, actually. It wasn't a very spectacular game, but on Echelon, Life went for, I think, a 24 drone all-in or something around that number. And Tasia didn't see it. He didn't have a bunker up. He only had 4 Hellions and 2 Reapers and just held it anyway. And I made that experience myself with him. You just can't all-in that kid. It doesn't matter what he has. His micro is so good. And I think that's really cool if you're able to micro really well, that as a Terran, you can hold off ridiculous all-ins. And I would hope that would be more similar in other matchups too.
Yeah, it really seems that way. We were actually talking recently about how Flash did that against Hiva as well on, what map was it? I think it was Derelict Watcher in GSL. It was just like the most insane hold off 3 command centers against a crazy Bane Roach. But we can get into micro holding off all-ins and its volatility factors when we start talking about a little bit something else in a minute here. Right, what did you think of the games? Anything cool that you see?
Well, I really enjoyed the tournament. I especially enjoyed Taja's performance because he just, I don't know, I think he looked better this weekend than he looked ever, and he's looked really good before, so that was really impressive for me. Other than that, like TLO said, I feel like all the games are kind of, there's really not much new strategies happening. It's kind of just the same thing over and over, which isn't necessarily a good thing for the game. But I feel like all the games were pretty standard. I think MMA played some really good games, especially against Innovation. That when he was up 1-0 on Star Station, and on Star Station he dominated the whole game. He killed like 3 command centers. He was up on bases and had him contained, and then somehow he ended up losing that game to that one timing push, which that was really like an epic game for me. But I was really sad that MMA didn't win. Other than that, I enjoyed Life's games, but I feel like they weren't the best. I feel like overall the Zerg performance at this tournament wasn't that amazing, so for me it wasn't really that cool to watch the later rounds of the tournament.
What did you think of Life's play overall? Like, did you think that he's like kind of back? Do you think that it was like a little bit lacking? Because I mean, he did get a top 4, but it didn't seem quite as crisp as I see some Zergs personally.
Yeah, I feel like Life, like 5-6 months ago, he was really the guy to look to for like perfect plays. But this tournament, he played good, but it was still kind of shaky. Like even the games he won, the series he won, he could have lost them. And then when he played Tasia, he just got crushed. So I don't know. I wasn't too impressed by any of the Zergs. I feel like Jaedong, if he had just played Terrans, he would have really dominated. But he got unlucky and lost to SOS. So didn't get to see any of that.
It's too bad. I was hoping to see more Jaedong in that tournament. Would have been epic. But against Tasia in the second round, do you think he actually could have taken him?
I think Jaedong would have beaten him. Yeah, I feel like Jaedong's EVT. If you watch his stream and if you watch the WCS America games last night, and just overall the way he's playing, he's still improving. It's really impressive to see how he just like switched to StarCraft 2, and he's on EG. It's not like he's on a Kespa team. He's just like on EG by himself. Yeah, well, with the EG teammates, of course, but he's really almost getting as good as he used to be in StarCraft 1. It's really amazing for me.
Yeah, he's looking pretty bad. Do you think that Jaedong would have taken out Tasia TLO?
It's hard to say. Teja was always saying that lately ZvT has been his weakest matchup, but actually at Dreamhack Bucharest, he was saying he regained a lot of confidence, like all of a sudden, and he said his game has improved a ton when it comes to TVC just in a few days again, because StarCraft 2 actually is a lot about confidence. Even if technically you have the same skill as before, if you lose your faith in your builds, it just becomes very hard to do things. Suddenly you make wrong estimations, you think you're behind all game, and even though maybe you're even ahead and make wrong decisions. It would have been tough for Teja maybe even still, because as Jos was saying, Jaedong's CVT is just so crisp. I feel like in CVT it's so much about clean play, and Jaedong is one of the cleanest players out there.
He's pretty damn good mechanically, I have to say. One of my favorite Zergs. I was very sad to see him go down. Harstem, what did you think about Dreamhack? Any cool stuff, especially from the Protoss side?
Actually, I think all the Protoss were out in the round of 8, if I recall correctly. I think SOS lost round of 8 or round of 4? Round of 8.
He was out round of 8.
Yeah, same Elfi. Elfi managed to beat Stardust. Even though that was really cool to watch, I think Stardust would have been able to get a bit further in the tournament than Elfi would have been. I think Stardust is better in PvC and PvT than Elfi is, even though Elfi has been showing some good results lately. SOS against Jaedong was cool to watch, and I actually enjoyed the finals, especially the game on Star Station. Teja against Innovation was really cool to watch. Recently, I started watching some other matchups as well, just purely for entertainment, and TVT is probably my favorite matchup. If it's really high level, and otherwise it's probably TVC. But yeah, I really enjoyed that game.
Yeah, those are actually some pretty fun matchups. You said that you thought Stardust would have gotten further than Elfi. Do you think Stardust actually would have been able to kill off Innovation, who Elfi lost to?
I think he would have had a better shot at killing Innovation.
Elfi even beat 4GG in the seeding matches.
Did he really?
Yeah.
I don't think
he almost took the seed. He beat 4GG and then he lost to SOS. But he did beat a Terran, so it's not like he was doing this tournament off the back of his PvP. He took out 4GG, which is crazy.
Damn. Good for Elfi.
Do you think he's actually good now, or just it was just random?
I think Elfi is actually quite good. I mean, he did well at Asus, I think. He beat Welmu there. I'm not sure if he advanced from his group, but he did quite well there. He did well at Dreamhack Valencia, he got round of 8, and now again round of 8, Dreamhack Bucharest, and we can't call it random anymore if you keep on consistently doing it.
Yeah, he plays crazy. I mean, we all know that, but it seems to work out for him. I feel like still he's one of the players where if you invest a lot of time to look at his games, you probably are not going to have that hard of a time compared to some other players. But then again, he mixes it up so much that if you analyze him, it might just backfire to you. Because if you think he's going to play that way, suddenly he does something completely different that you've never seen before. So he's, I would say he's one of those guys you really don't want to meet in a tournament, but is probably not going to win it like for a very long time. So I think there's a lot of Protoss players out there who are kind of like that, because Protoss works in a certain way that it's just really easy to lose to certain builds.
Like one base 5 gate.
Yeah, you had to bring it up.
We have both lost to that now, so I don't feel alone anymore in losing to Elfi's one base on Whirlwind.
Is it like a Nexus cancel 5 gate?
No, it's
no,
just
it's like
and you scout lane.
School 4-5 gate, 4-5 gate, one base, all in, and it works.
He doesn't even cancel Nexus?
No.
It just works.
Because on Whirlwind you don't really, like, you wouldn't need to drone scout to see it if you don't find him first position, and then, you don't have anything.
I think I've seen this build before, actually. Did he do it, like, a long time ago as well?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's not really a new build.
It sounds kind of familiar. Speaking of Protoss, what you just said about them, why does Protoss, because once again, as Harstem mentioned, all the Protoss out in round of 8, Why does Protoss not generally get super deep? Like every now and then, like yeah, this last season, WCS EU, obviously, Protoss did well, but overall, Protoss is having a hard time getting to finals and winning in tournaments. Why is that?
My opinion is that Protoss variance is too high.
Why? You gotta explain beyond that,
Okay.
man.
So
The guys in the
basically,
chat don't know what you're talking about. Come on.
so basically, Protoss is really good at beating players who are better than you, but is also very bad in playing people who aren't as good as you, who can still beat you. There's too many build order advantages in ZvP, in my opinion. And the reason why that is because Protoss is designed in such a way that there is no defender's advantage. So Protoss has warp and pylons. So as soon as a pylon is up, there's no more warp and advantage. So Protoss players who aren't as good as you can, get away with stuff if they take a really big risk that is really, really strong. But to make up for that, Protoss has to be made kind of weak, like gateway units. Zealots and Stalkers aren't very good in comparison to, let's say, Marines, Marauders, Roaches, Lynx, and Banelings. And also the scouting information at the beginning is much harder to obtain for both players in comparison to CVT or CVC. And even if you see an all-in coming in CVC or CVT, just as it moves out of the enemy base, you still have a ton of time to react, while Protoss is more set in its way. Like it either has the right units to defend it or it doesn't, and then there's not much room to work with that anymore.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about Protoss. It's like, it's kind of a random race. Like it's really strong, or it's just hard countered and it doesn't work. So like when Protoss players are really mixing up their builds, they become extremely powerful and hard to play against. But for Protoss to consistently win against a player above a certain level, it's really tough. Like you can't really decide as Protoss, like, I'm going to play a macro game because I'm better than this guy and I will outplay him. The moment you decide as Protoss to play a macro game and play safe, if the other guy is abusing you, you basically can't win. So it's really hard for Protoss. Like it's really easy for them to get easy wins and get strong, quick wins with their timing attacks they have off 2 bases and stuff, which is really strong. But to consistently win off the back of just being an amazing player in like a macro game, I feel like as Protoss, it's much harder than like as Terran or Zerg.
I think this mainly is for PvZ that you have to attack a lot, but I don't agree with that in PvT. PvT you can play macro just fine because it's okay. Like Terran can go 3cc if they know you play macro, but it's still not so hard to overcome that disadvantage. If you're just a better player, you can multitask, do zealot run bys, have good high Templar positioning. And even in PvZ, I think you can play quite solid, but playing solid doesn't mean that you're just sitting on your ass macroing on 3 bases, but you have to keep on attacking to know what your opponent is doing and reacting to it. You can't just kind of hope that he isn't going muta if you're going for a 4-gate robo, then a third, and then, well, let's maybe do a push at 14 minutes. Well, he's going to go up to 7 base and have like 14 gas by 12 minutes and have 25 mutas at your natural. So that isn't really how you're supposed to play PvZ, I think. If you want to play it solid, you can't just do one build every game and not attack. What you can do is you can do one build every game and then scout with hallucination, see if there's an opening to attack, just have your units on the map. Especially with the Mothership Core, it's so easy to recall back. And when it has 200 energy, you even have a defensive tool in it. So if you don't have the proper unit composition, you can still hold most of the time. And I think that's something that we haven't seen too much lately. I myself have been experimenting with it. It has been going quite well. And I think we might see it more in the future, or I'm just completely wrong and we won't see it at all.
So why do you think that Protoss has not won a tournament recently?
I think we haven't seen any of the... I don't think Rain has done any foreign tournament. I think he's one of the more stable macro tosses. Stardust is someone who all-ins a lot in every matchup, PvP, PvZ. Even in PvT, he likes to all-in a lot. Then there's players like Nanima, who's very, very predictable. Even though what he does is really good. He played the Void Ray style for such a long time. Almost everyone knew it was coming after 4 months. Yeah, I guess predictability is something. I'm not too sure, actually. Maybe there are just better Terran players going to foreign tournaments at the moment. Like Innovation and Teja are probably the two best Terran players in the world, but Rain and I guess Super are some good Protoss players. They don't really go to foreign tournaments that often.
Do you also think maybe, because I was talking about the matchup being volatile, but the best example of that is probably PvP. Do you think that maybe in PvP it often happens that the worst player beats a better Protoss player in the mirror matchup, which leads to the worst ZvP or TvP player to advance, which makes it really hard for them to go further in the tournament. Which doesn't happen so much in CVC and TvT, I think.
I think this might actually be possible. PvP can be quite coin flippy still. If both players wanna, or if one player really is going for a macro game, he can almost always get there while being behind. But if the other guy goes all out greed and then does a later all-in against that, he probably will still win, even though he's a worse player. I could play a certain build order, tell my opponent, and there's no way I'm going to win the game if he plays a very risky or a very aggressive build order himself. So that might be a thing. Yeah, I'm not too sure actually why it isn't happening. I think the two Terran players that are kind of winning every tournament, Teja, Innovation. Now that Innovation is going to foreign tournaments, I think we're going to see more Terran wins as well there.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting, like the foreign tournaments. Before Bucharest, you just saw like Jadong and Hyun going. So you saw like amazing Zergs and like Lenok. And then Terran players, Teja. But for like there are so many players in Korea that are actually amazing, but they have this one chance to qualify for GSL. Then they have to deal with PvP matchup. And just a lot of random factors which makes them maybe not qualify the first time. And so I feel like the tournament sample size of games is not really fully representing the whole scheme of like StarCraft and what exactly is happening. And even like if you're a really amazing Protoss player and you don't qualify for GSL and you're not on a foreign team, you have no chance to show off your skills basically anywhere. So it's really hard to see new talent and like amazing players just because they don't get into GSL if they are in Korea. So I don't know. It would be nice if there was a way, if there was some online tournaments or more tournaments where everyone can join and all these players in Korea practicing so much on the ladder could actually show off what they have. And I guess in GSTL and before Pro League and stuff like that, you see more players, and there are Protoss players doing really well there. So if we saw them more at foreign tournaments, they might be doing better.
So far it kind of feels like you guys have boiled it down, at least in part, to the PvP matchup and the kind of randomness that you know, as you said, right, there's so many good Protoss players in Korea that don't quite make it through, and a piece of that is probably losing PvP because players can make it very coin flippy if they decide to. You know, you get someone like Elfi, and he's very good with it, but he can make it so that it gets decided very early on, and maybe that's not your skill set or something, you know. Especially if you're a strong macro Protoss, your skill set probably isn't as much in like the aggressive 3-gate Oracle PvP as it is in the fast expansion PvP that might be a little bit weak to that. Is that like a fair statement?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Because to be like a complete Protoss, it feels like you have to know so many different build orders and so many different styles to play. Because as Harstem was saying, if you're like too predictable as a Protoss, especially in PvP, you can just get blind countered. So I feel the strength in Protoss also lies in having a ton of different build orders, but it's also its weakness because it kind of relies on that strength. So it's a lot of metagaming, maybe. It's a lot about build orders and mixing up your build orders rather than... I mean, Terran has been playing pretty much the same build orders in all matchups, slightly modified for the last 2 years, which is also helping them a little bit to just play better. Because if you've been training the same style for a really long time, it's just going to become better and better at it. And Heart of the Swarm probably changed the least for Terran, like the way you play the game. You just got new tools to add to your current styles. So it helped them just to be a little bit ahead in the skill curve, maybe.
Is it fair to say that Protoss practice is inefficient compared to Zerg and Terran practice because you have so many more strategies that you have to mix in so that you're not predictable?
Maybe you need a different approach to the practice, but definitely a more difficult approach than Zerg and Terran.
Do you think that way?
I think it's different.
How so?
I mean, if you're Zerg, you're just like, there are certain things that are the same in every matchup. You're creep spreading, you're injecting. Those are all things that can be perfected. If you're making overlords, you're not getting supply blocked. I guess there are just like a certain like things you can hold to. If you do them perfectly, you're never going to really play a too bad of a game. But if you're a Protoss, you just rely on different things. You rely on mind games and making your opponent believing that you're doing something you're not. It just makes it harder to always consistently win based on the back of like mass practice. Like mass practice benefits like mechanics and things like multitask. But as Protoss, I feel like other things are probably more important.
Yeah,
Harstem,
I just think playing games like playing 40 games a day with TOS, not watching any replays or any VODs, you're not gonna get good. You're gonna get good by talking about the game with other Protoss players, with other Zerg players, with other Terran players, maybe even playing their race for a bit to see where their weaknesses are. I actually play Zerg and Terran every now and then in the TVP and CVP then, just to feel what feels annoying, what feels bad, and then you kind of use that. As well as you watch a lot of replays and VODs. And I think we've been doing that for the past 3 years. So in general, I think Protoss have a bit less APM or a bit slower mechanically, but might be, I wouldn't necessarily say smarter, but they know more about their own race and maybe about their opponent's race as well.
Okay,
so
because of this studying of the VODs and whatnot that Protosses have to do to have that strategy variety? Is that why?
Yeah, I think so. And you need to really use other people's weaknesses instead of your own strengths, especially in PvZ. This is true.
But Dario is always saying that Protoss players don't put the same amount of effort into learning their race. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, I think that Protoss players are lacking behind mechanically. Actually, I feel like there's more you can still do with Protoss that people aren't really exploiting entirely, which is probably because people need to invest more time into, you know, learning like strategies of other players than being able to focus more on yourself. But I still believe there's unused potential. Protoss players aren't using them. It feels like their probe saturation isn't as perfect. The building placement could be more consistent. And, you know, just those tiny things that add up to a lot more. While Zerg and Terran is more forced to optimize your play. As a Zerg player, if I don't, like, it's in the nature of Zerg to have to optimize your mechanics, because if you don't, you just lose games, like, right away. You get punished immediately. While as a Protoss, you don't get punished directly for it, because you can still win games by being strategically better than your opponent.
And pressing F.
So it doesn't get enforced as much. Yeah, maybe also pressing F, but it's just, yeah, I feel like Protoss players can improve on their micro and their macro a little bit more, and maybe need to focus a little bit less on the strategy and still, you know, be able to put in the same effort as the other two races.
You might be right, but it's very frustrating to just practice while you're not actually having an idea what to do in a matchup. It's like you would go roach max every game in ZvT, and after a while you would have perfect injects and perfect creep spread, but you're still not winning. And it just feels very, very frustrating if you don't have any idea what you're doing and just practicing away. So I do agree that we still, as a Protoss race, have a long way to go, but yeah, we're probably lacking a bit behind in mechanical skill. And are a bit ahead in strategical skill. And it seems that at this moment, mechanical skill is a bit more important still because we're not winning.
Yeah, it remains to be seen.
Is this something that's going to balance out, though? Because Protoss strategies are always kind of rotating and changing a little bit as well, so they do have to stay on top of that. But, I mean, I'm sure that Harstem plays as many hours probably as you guys do, right? So, I mean, how does this gap get filled? When do we actually get Protosses that can consistently hit the top of tournaments? Because Nano has a perfect example of what you guys have been talking about, where he'll come into a tournament every now and then and be strategically a mile ahead of everyone and kill it, like just destroy in the tournament, and then eventually lose to some crazy good Korean. But in other tournaments, he's kind of figured out, and he has a harder time actually getting through. So how does this all come together?
I think it's very hard. I think it's very hard because like Naniwa can beat Jaedong, but then Naniwa can lose to Targa.
Yeah.
So like Targa's good, but like Jaedong is so much higher. It's just really weird. Like, I don't know. Protoss is just such a volatile race.
Styles clash so hard. Like, there's some Protoss players I cannot lose games to, and they are maybe even better players than I am. And then there's other Protoss players who I just lose 90% of my games to, and I have to just play completely out of my style build orders to win against those people. If I just play my normal solid style against them, it just doesn't work. So you have much more clash of styles in ZvP, which also supports the argument that it's a very volatile race. And the less stable somebody is in terms of probabilities to advance, like, it's so hard to win a tournament. You might go like somewhat far if you get a lucky draw, if you just meet the right people in a tournament that your style works good against, but then you meet that one guy who might not be as good as you are, but has a style you cannot defeat. It becomes very strange.
I'm really curious, like in the Caspa team houses and the Korean team houses, they have like the internal practice, how Protoss is doing, because in Europe it's kind of hard to really have a good grasp of everything, because there are maybe 5 or 6 Protoss players in Europe who are playing at the very top of like the whole scene, and you only get them a few times on ladder, so it's really hard to really understand fully how the game is working. But I really am curious how Protosses are doing inside the team houses in Korea, where they're living together and everybody knows everything about everyone. And they're playing 20 games against each other, and how that's going. And I feel like that kind of information can really tell balance. But as a European player on the European server, it's kind of hard because it's very random. It's very...
Yeah, I think Terran is probably also the race which is most consistent in terms of build orders throughout the entire world. Like, there's no European Terran style or American Terran style or Korean Terran style. It's all the same, kind of. Well, I feel for Protoss, there's many more differences between how they approach the game. Because there's no perfect way to play Protoss in terms of build orders, while for Terran there's pretty much optimized builds that just work against anything.
It does. It certainly seems that way. And I'm really interested in what you just said, Yos, about what are their ranks within the teams, because I would love to see how that measures up to like the Korean Grandmaster ladder, where it's all barcodes and Protosses dominate. Do those same Protosses that dominate that ladder dominate in their team houses? I'm not so sure, because they obviously are going to know who they are and how to counter it. It's kind of a funny.
Yeah, I wish there was a gateway where the Koreans could really share their whole opinion of StarCraft 2, because they have 10 years of experience with StarCraft 1 and 10 years of experience with Balance, and it would be great if they could somehow, voice their opinion on everything with so much knowledge and background behind it. But I feel like in the foreign scene we don't really hear that much about them. We just see their games, but we don't hear that much about what's really going on in their houses.
I need to do Meta Care Edition.
You're in Korea,
it's gonna be a very slow episode.
That's up to you.
You can get Chopra, I guess.
Well, any other thoughts on Dreamhack Bucharest overall from you guys?
The Romanian fans are awesome.
Oh yeah, that's true.
They are.
I feel like, StarCraft 2 is kind of people say it's on the decline, but at Romania, in Bucharest, I have never signed so many autographs or taken pictures since like 2011. So it was really nice to be there.
Yeah,
I
they
agree.
were pretty awesome.
The fact
Really
that,
good English too.
yeah, the fact that there were so many people watching SC2L at 3 a.m. was also mind-blowing. I would have expected the stadium to completely empty, like, throughout the Clan League, just it was getting so late, but it was almost entirely filled up still.
They are pretty badass. Harstem, any closing thoughts on Bucharest?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Solid.
Sick. I agree. High fives all around.
Harstem, didn't you meet a girl?
Maybe.
I thought so.
There were at least a few there. All right, let's jump into our next little subject. I want to talk about Protoss vs. Zerg, the Forge expand versus the Gateway expand. And it's funny because obviously we've seen it like fluctuate back and forth what Protosses prefer. So I have a Protoss here along with a couple Zergs, and I want to hear from everybody, like, what is the reasoning for every little piece of this? Like, Harstem, for instance, how do you choose the map and when to Forge expand versus Gateway expand? And for instance, as Zerg players, TLO and Rhett, like, which do you rather play against on what type of map? What's your favorite way to go against whichever one? So, I don't know, just start talking, we'll delve in.
I think it's kind of hard to just... Normally I decide what build I want to do on a map, and then I pick whether I do Gate or Forge. But most of the time it actually is Gate lately. Forge just isn't as good anymore as it used to be, because everything is very, very predictable, and Zerg can drone up quite freely, just having the timings in mind that TOS can hit. It's been so extremely figured out. Well, Gate, on the other hand, hasn't really been figured out. So I'm not really sure if I do it specifically with a map. I guess on some maps I like to do big sentry pushes, then I'd rather play Forge, because I get a lot of sentries and have at least some tech units with it. So maybe Belshir, I would say Forge. I like it a bit better, but I like to play Gate on that map as well. So it's just quite random, really, just a feeling.
Okay, and is there one that you practice more on ladder? Like, is it just you're kind of doing a little bit more Gateway, as you said, so you just practice that a little bit more?
Yeah, I almost only practice Gateway. I think I basically know all the build orders for Forge, or if there is a new build order, it's very easy to execute, because I've been playing Forge for the past 2.5 years and only Gate for the past, well, 5-6 months in Heart of the Swarm. So I think Forge is pretty figured out. There's still, like with the quick third, I think that's one of the best things you can do when you go Forge, or some very weird 2-base timing, but otherwise I don't see Forge expand working.
Okay, and is there like a player though that, like, let's say in the European scene, that you're playing against them in a tournament, you're like, well, I'm going to go Forge against this guy? Is there like a certain player with a certain style
Starbuck,
that you
maybe?
think Forge? Starbuck?
Yeah, maybe against Starbuck you would do something like that. But then again, he likes to do drone pools against Forge Fast Expand. So I think I would just kind of like do a Gate and wall of my main ramp with it, just to play safe.
3 Gate expand.
Yeah, 3 Gate Expand, Zealot Sentry.
The birdie style.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think there are any Zergs where you just play Forge against. I think it's always good to mix up. You can have like little mind games with it, go Gate without Scout in the first game, then if he plays Hedge, then you see that in the match history or in the build order, then you cannon him next game. I like to do stuff like that. I like cannons in general. But
yeah, I think that's a really good point Kevin makes there. I don't think it's good to always Gate expand or always Forge expand. As long as you you can choose one build to do the majority of games, but if you have a 20 to 80% ratio, I think that's really good. Because if somebody doesn't scout like all the time, and then one time he scouts, you kind of know it's Forge expand. But if you mix up the probe timing from scouting a little bit, then it becomes difficult, and you always need to send a drone to your natural to make sure there's no cannons coming up, and trying to keep Zerg as uncertain about what's going on in the game is the most important thing in ZvP, I feel.
I agree. I think the hardest Protoss players are the players that really mix it up between Cannon Rush, Gate Expand, and just regular Forge Expand. And when you don't know what's going on, you can't counter it. Like, if you know someone is always going Gate Expand, like I think we saw Jadong against Naniwa, and Naniwa's been playing Gate Expand forever, then you can even like offensive hatchery in a natural and do all sorts of things to counter that, go speed first with hatch first, and have an easier time. But if you just don't know, then you have to... it's really hard. The openings are so important in ZvP that it's really important Protoss plays all styles and mixes it up.
It also has a psychological factor. You are very confident against the player you know is always going to play the same build orders. But if he's really strong and you're already a little bit afraid of that player in the tournament, and then he starts mixing it up a lot, it can really destroy your vibe. You get out of your flow and you start worrying much more. Like, I have the problem in ZvP that I'm constantly worried because I'm constantly thinking about all the things Protoss could do to me at the moment, and then I lose focus in the game. And that happens the most with people who just have a big variety of build orders they can pick from.
What do you guys prefer to play against, if you had to choose?
Definitely Forge.
Forge.
Is that just because you know exactly what to do and how many drones to get and all that?
Yeah, there's so many more different ways you can play Gateway Expand. You can go 3-gate, 4-gate, you can warp in units or just don't warp in units. You can follow it up with Phoenix, you can go Immortal push after that. And you can decide to commit with your 4 zealots or just, and wait for the next 4 zealots, but you don't know if it's coming or not. And then there's a recall, maybe there's no recall, I don't know.
Don't forget about Mothership Core, it's so strong. Like,
yeah.
I almost feel like Gate is better just because the Mothership Core is so fast, and it's just awesome in so many ways, offensively, defensively. And also with the Gate Expand, you can get a really fast Stalker Sentry, and scouting becomes a huge problem against Forge Expand. You can move your overlords around for a very long time, so you can have a much better idea what's going on. But against Gate Expand, you basically can't really scout after a certain point.
You can also have very strange and fast third base timings with Warp Gate that you can't really have with Forge Expand. You can, like, your opponent would need to make a big mistake as a Zerg to allow a really fast third, but with Gate Expand you can pressure and then take the third, which is another option. And the more option Protoss has, the better he's off.
I have a huge problem with Gate Expand into Blink builds. Like, there are so many games where they Gate Expand and I don't know what's going on, and I start building Spore Crawlers because I'm like, sure, it's like DT or air units, and then it's like 8-gate Blink, and you don't have roach speed, and it's just, you lose.
I don't do a lot of Blink after Gate Expand actually, but that does sound kind of cool, because normally the standard thing to do after 3-gate or 4-gate pressure would be Phoenix. I think that's one of the things, especially in Korea, is very, very popular. So like you mentioned, you get like 3 or 4 spores, maybe an extra queen or something, and then you don't have any units at all to defend a sick timing attack. I think it's the same if they do like an immortal push after it. If you just hide the robo and the units well, it's kind of easy to deny scouting if you leave 1 stalker or a stalker and a sentry at home, and you pressure with like 3 or 4 zealots. You kind of walk around your pylon. If you see only links, you just warp in a few more zealots and then just go to immortals or the blink and then attack. You kind of just can win games with that. I think the biggest thing with Gate Expand though, in comparison to Forge, is that at Forge, the earliest timing that you can really attack is like 740, if it's not some kind of 6-7 gate from 1 gas, like 740 with +1, but they can scout it because they see the early +1 on the Forge. While with Gate, you can attack at 6, then you recall, you can attack again at 8, or you can wait for 10 minutes. You can do lots of crazy stuff as well with Nexus cancels. You can really trick Zerg players, and like we said so many times before, tricking Zerg players is, if you can trick a Zerg, you basically won the game.
Well, now, here's something. For people that go for a gateway expansion, obviously we have it completely mapped out how you play against the Forge Fast expansion. But against gateway expansions, sometimes I see the Zerg, the second he scouts, he's like, okay, I'm getting Zergling speed. Sometimes I see them just go right up to 3 hatch as if it's a Forge expand still, even after scouting it. And sometimes from there they try to get Zergling speed. Sometimes I see them throw down the Roach Warren. What's the actual optimal way to play against this? Because, as you guys said, they can deny a lot of scouting going on, so it can be hard to choose. Like, what is the actual best way, in all 3 of your opinions, to play against the gateway expand where you're having, you've just scouted it? What is your thought process from there?
Well, I think the problem is that there's no optimal answer, because decisions are being made before, from both players make decisions before the things actually happen, and you can't adjust too much. You can whittle a little bit, but the gas timing of the Zerg is basically before Protoss decides to go 3-gate or 4-gate, and Protoss doesn't really see the gas timing either. So it's a little bit problematic. I feel like Red's build might be the best, where he just goes 3 archeries and then just tries to flood the pylon with slow links. But there's probably things that really, really hard counter that as well.
Wait, yeah, I actually think I casted you doing exactly that on Belshare, was it? Was that actually against Harstem? I can't even...
That was against Oz.
Oh, yes. That
was a blink. I lost a blink that game.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's exactly my problem with the matchup. Like, I was making spores, and then it's like 6-7 gate blink, and you don't have roach speed. You just lose.
Yeah, I don't think you can make blind spores. Maybe, I don't know. What I feel is what Zerg players don't do enough yet is to really spread speed links all over the map. Because overlords can be denied and you don't want to have too many overlords out on the map as they can just be killed by Phoenix. But let's say you manage to kill the first pylon and you manage to like deny the first push by Protoss and you have like 15 links. What you should probably do is make a line over the entire map like you used to do in Brood War as well. You just send them out on the entire map. And then you really don't have to make those spores immediately because first of all, you're going to see any probes coming out trying to make a pylon to see DTs being warped in. And second of all, you're going to see Phoenix, even though your spores are not going to finish entirely in time, they might still be, you know, soon enough for you to not take tremendous amounts of damage.
Okay. Harstem, what do you think is the optimal way for a Zerg to play against a Gateway Expander? Is it Rhett's idea of the 3 hatch and just make sure you have enough lings to kill whatever comes?
I don't think you can do it with links, not against 4-gate pressures. The Naniwa build that he used first at Stockholm, which was 1 gas, then going 4 gates. If you see that it's gasless and he's just building links, then you can just kind of stand near your pylon, and with a time warp you can kill unlimited amount of links till like 730 or something. It's ridiculous how many links you can kill if you just micro a little bit with your mothership core and you have like 5 zealots, then you have 9 zealots. Like you need 50 links to kill 9 zealots, and then there's 1 more warp in, and he uses time warp. He just micros back to his pylon. I don't think it's possible to defend those kind of attacks with links. I think against this, you actually can get roaches.
I think you can. Like, if you go 3 hatch gasless, and then you get your gas between 410, 415, and then you get 3 queens, and you have 3 hatcheries, you can make literally so many links. That you can
literally so many.
You can make so many. You can stop any kind of zealot pressure, and if it ends, you have so much larva that you can mass drone. So I feel like it's the best way to play. And with your first overlord, you check the gateway timing at the natural, so you kind of know like if the gateways go down immediately at the natural, you know it's like going to be like 3-gate, 4-gate pressure. If it doesn't, you know it's a tech building. You know it's like a Stargate or a Twilight Council, either one. So I think playing 3 hatch gasless is the best way to deal with it. And I have not lost to 4-gate pressure in over 3 weeks playing like this.
I don't think it's the optimal way, because you're probably going to be behind in drones. Like you can stop it, but you can probe behind it. Maybe not against 4-gate, but I think 3-gate might actually be better against it, as you can continuously probe behind it with chrono boost on it if you sometimes cut 1 warp in. So he will be 9 or 10 workers ahead the moment you stop it, and then you still have to catch up. You're going to be ahead eventually, but I think with other builds you can be ahead in drones earlier. So I don't think that's the perfect way. I don't think there is a perfect way, like Dario said as well, that you can just do 1 build every single game, or 1 response every single game. Recently I've been seeing more 3 hatch than take their gases between, like you mentioned, around 4 or 15. And then they just get roaches as early as possible, get like 5 sets of links just to act like they're actually building links. Then you have like 7 roaches, and they make a little pressure with it as well after they stopped it. So you have to warp in a little bit more. I don't think that's perfect either, but...
Yeah, the fast third base would be really strong against that, I think. Even though you have roaches to pressure, you can't really do much about the mothership and a few stalkers and zealots to, you know...
Exactly. And I think defending with roaches is a very big problem if the guy decides to go Robo instead of Stargate. Because if he has 1 Immortal out, the 7 roaches that you just made are horrible, and you actually have to make more roaches to make them not complete trash anymore. Or at least that's how I feel like. Or you have to go to some other unit.
Actually, that's a really good point you're making there too, which I think is another problem we have in the ZvP matchup. Compositions matter too much. There's too many hard counters, in my opinion. Immortal completely owns roaches, Immortal completely owns ultras, but if you don't have Immortals, you get completely crushed by ultras, which is fine to have units which are really good against other units, but it feels like it's a little bit too extreme in ZvP in the sense that if you have 1 200 composition that is just lacking a few of the key units, you just lose so cost inefficiently. And it's not like key spellcasters, like you need to have those 3 Templars, but it's those really normal army units that have so different values in fighting each other that it's really problematic.
Yeah, I feel like it's really difficult. Like someone makes an Immortal, and the Zerg is focused on going mutas at some point, the Protoss loses. You make those Immortals and the Zerg focus on Roach Hydra, and you have the Robo, Protoss wins. But it's like there's so many. The game is so fast, and people make decisions like not really based on what they scout, but just how their mindset is going into the game. That I think that's why it's really hard for Protoss players to win consistently. Because if a guy makes a few roaches, but his whole plan the whole time is to go for a mass muta switch, if Protoss plan is not the whole time to hard counter mass mutas, they might lose, even if they're a better player. So I don't know. The units are like TLO said, it's so much about hard countering and
the compositions build up so fast too. In CVT, it slowly becomes like I feel like CVT just slowly expands and becomes bigger and bigger, and both people like slowly build up their army. While in Zerg just makes against Terran. Against Terran, you constantly have to spend your money. It's not like you can make a switch. Oh, I'm gonna make 30 mutas now because if I have 3,000 in my bank, I'm just dead. Like, there's no way this is gonna work. Against Protoss, I can just try to sit in my base. His army is very slow, so if he moves out, I can still make other units, and then I can just make that tremendous amount of different units that he's not prepared for. And on the other hand, if Protoss had the Stargate hidden and just made 6 Phoenix, and I make a muta switch, and he already has a really high Phoenix number, it becomes almost impossible to do any damage with that. So yeah, I'm not happy about the matchup, I can tell you that, to be honest. For both sides, to be honest, for both sides.
This is what I was saying earlier, where I think that Protoss has to attack constantly the same way that Terran does. Like if Terran would sit back 12 minutes, the way Protoss does right now, they would get 6 tech switches against them as well. I'm pretty sure about that. But they just keep on attacking, and I think it's possible for TOS as well, but we just haven't figured out the way how. I think with the new Prism, it's a lot easier to scout. If not for hallucination, it also already got a bit easier. But with the Prism, you can see what units are popping quite easily. It's very easy to count larvae with it as well. Normally, if you see a lot of idle larvae, it kind of means muta, so you just attack and kind of win the game most of the time. I think the Robo style is quite good, but you have to attack every single time. If you play Phoenix style, I'm not actually sure what to do because you can't attack. You don't have enough units to move out on the map. So if we are going to see that style, it has to be with Robo or Twilight. But I'm not sure which one is going to be the best. Or if it's even going to be the best, because it might just be complete trash and my ass.
The problem is if you don't go Stargate, my creep spread can get really out of control very quickly. It's kind of like, I feel like Phoenix kind of function a little bit like Hellions in CVT. So you kind of contain Zerg a little bit in their base. They can't just freely move out with their queens. And they can't just take a 4th base. Because if you immediately take a 4th base, you can't drone it up because you're just going to get owned by Phoenixes. So it's difficult. It's really, I need to think about that a lot more. Like, seriously, in the last 3 years of StarCraft 2 is the only matchup in which I don't entirely know why I'm losing. In CVT, after every single game I lost, I know exactly what went completely wrong. Like, there's no doubt about it, and I can pinpoint mistakes I made. In CVC, the same thing. In CVP, it's very hard to make mistake analysis and try to really improve your game and become more solid in it. It's also the matchup in which I have weeks in which I just beat all the Protoss, and then I have weeks in which I just lose to all the Protoss. So I think everybody experiences that from both sides as well.
Yeah, I think CVT is it's just the best matchup because it's always the same. Like, people are just building armies and attacking and microing, and then they're microing against each other, and whoever micros and macros better wins. But in ZvP, it's very, very different. It's hard to play always at the best of your ability and still win. ZvP Mechanics will dominate. ZvP unit compositions dominate, and there is no educated guesses on unit compositions at all times.
How would a perfect player overcome that, though? The difficulty of figuring out... I know with Protoss it can be a little bit harder at times because they can stock a lot of larvae and have all the production coming out of the hatchery anyways. But let's say a perfect Zerg player. How would they overcome the fact that these compositions are hard to scout and hard to counter just exactly right?
I feel there's still room with superior mechanics and multitasking that you can balance out a little bit. First of all, creep spread, I feel, is a little bit underutilized in ZvP. If you compare it, like I don't know if it's just me, but my creep spread is so much worse in ZvP, not just because it's harder to get tumors out because the build orders are different, but also the idle times that I don't spread tumors is for some reason just much higher than in CVT. Which is probably also because you get punished more directly in CVT. If I don't have creep spread out in CVT, there's just no way I can even win games. But in CVP, it just doesn't feel as important, but it's still, you know, a big factor overall, I think. And yeah, you kind of constantly have to move on the map, I feel, in CVP as a Zerg player to try to force Protoss movement in certain ways. If I have half my army close to your third and half of my army close to your natural, even if the army itself isn't that big, I can kind of make you not move out because Protoss has the problem that he can't really split up his army while attacking, which is another problem, by the way, in the matchup, I think. But yeah,
you can leave a mothership core behind.
Yeah, but one mothership core isn't gonna kill 15 roaches.
Actually, I wish, even though it would be much stronger, I wish mothership core had proper recall, like in StarCraft 1. That you, for two reasons. Because if a mothership had recall, you would need to leave your mothership in your base if you want to use it to retreat, so you can't utilize it offensively. Or you would need to have it with your army or like with half of your army, and then you can teleport half of your army to unite with your other armies, and you can do like small attacks with it, like just warp in, recall like 10 units into the main of somebody else and then recall them out again. But right now, a mothership core is almost always best used to just be on top of the duff wall once more.
I have to agree with that. If it had proper recall, though, I
if you recall a Protoss army,
things you like recall on top of the ramp, like just that would be a fun 2-base all in.
Few sentries.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would need to be a research that you can get later in the game, because later in the game you would just need to be very careful about denying that to happen, which wouldn't be that hard, I think, because the mothership core is pretty slow. But
I think creep spread is also just different in ZvP because there's always an observer with the army.
Yeah.
It's not like they're wasting money to kill your creep, which they definitely are in TVZ. Like if you mass creep, they have to scan so much. They just have way less units. But in ZvP, there's just always an observer, so your creep just gets denied and it doesn't cost them anything.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there's not constant pressure like in CVT. Like in times when Protoss is sitting in their base, I just have complete reign over the map. So if I use a few overlords and a few queens to run out on the map, I can get so much creep spread out so quickly. And then if I spread it out to the left and right side on the map, and he just wants to go in, straight, I can just fill up the tumors again from left and right side, and it would really delay the timing of Protoss to really clean up everything. I don't know. Seriously.
Is it fair to say that Zerg vs Protoss and Protoss vs Zerg is the most complicated matchup in the game?
Maybe, yeah. Complicated.
You can say complicated or you can say random. It really depends what you want to go for, but it's just different. It's hard. I wish it was different. I wish it was more like StarCraft 1.
Yeah, me too.
I wish it was like in StarCraft 1, like skill just dominated everything. In StarCraft 2, it just feels like, I don't know. It's just hard. You can practice your ass off, you can still lose.
Well, you said that TVZ though, like, is just
TVZ is mechanics. You're just you're clashing against each other. You're banging your armies against each other. You're creep spreading. You're injecting. You're making drones. You just have like the guy with better mechanics is just gonna just kill.
But not just the better mechanics. I feel like engagements don't matter as much as in CVP in the sense that you're gonna have way more engagements in an entire game. So if you lose one engagement, you're gonna be in a disadvantage, but the game isn't over. And the defender's advantage in CVT is really, really high for both players. While in CVP, if you lose one engagement as either Protoss or as Zerg, it's almost impossible to come back from that. unless it's like really, really late game and people can remax and the defender's advantage is kind of big because they have a ton of spine crawlers and a ton of cannons at home. But I feel, yeah, the defender's advantage seems to be a big issue in ZvP, to be honest. Like Zerg sometimes even has a defender's disadvantage. Like the closer the Protoss army comes to your base, the more screwed you are, because force fields can just suddenly, dominate you, and you can't even get to your third base anymore. So you kind of have to fight him in the middle of the map, or like 1/3 to your base. And in Protoss, on the other hand, if the Zerg army is already on top of the Nexus, you can just snipe it, and then I don't know. It's CVT is so much more elegant in the terms that if you make a decision, it's gonna impact the game, but it's not gonna swing it so hard in the favor of the player or the other player that the game is basically over. Like if you think about it, CVT probably has like 20 engagements throughout the games, at least like 20 battles.
Constant rally points, constant reinforcements.
Yeah.
You miss your injects, you lose the game. You miss your supply depots, you can lose the game. Protoss, it's just like you either have the unit composition or you don't, and it's over. It's harder. It's more. It's less. I don't know. I feel like it rewards less the practice and the skill, but that's just my opinion.
Well, let's take a look at that for a minute, because if we look at one of the original questions earlier on in the show was Protoss, why don't they get to the finals? Why don't they win? And we're actually kind of redelving into that now. But if we look at the Protosses that have done well, there's just a handful that have consistently forever done well. What's different about them that made it so that they can always get up there? Like someone like MC, for instance. I guess he's by far the biggest one in that regard, where it's like, well, I mean, as much as we want to say anything about anything, MC has found ways with every composition, in every matchup, in every situation, to win and come out on top and win tournaments. Like, what is it about him that other Protoss players are lacking?
He all wins every game?
Huh?
He kind of does. He either 2-base wins or he 3-base wins.
Other Protosses are not necessarily lacking. I see plenty of Protosses that all win every game.
I think he has a way bigger killer instinct than anyone else. If I see a command center first, like a great example I think is WCS yesterday or 2 days ago where he played, and he played against Cos. If I would have seen a command center first, I was like, nice. Command center first, we're gonna macro, I'm gonna pull some guys out of gas, gonna get some more minerals, gonna get an earlier nexus. And I feel pretty confident. He chrono boosts 2 stalkers, a zealot, kills 12 workers, 6 marines, and kind of wins the game there. Follows up with 4-gate pressure or whatever, and he just wants to. Yeah, he capitalizes way more on things that are not necessarily mistakes, but that he can punish, or that he thinks he can punish. And we've seen very silly games of him where he does pressure and the guy has 2 bunkers, he just loses the game. But 7 other games he will win with that strategy. And there was a period where all-ins or pressures like that weren't very figured out, and he won a lot of games. And even now, if you play against him, he just forces so many mistakes. He's incredible at capitalizing on mistakes and forcing them himself as well. I think that's the difference. That, yeah, just a killer instinct that other Protoss players don't really have.
His micro is awesome. His micro is really good, and he understands the game. Like in Wings of Liberty, he went 3-base all in every game because he knows Brootlord and Fester will beat him. So he wanted to kill the Zerg before, and he did that every single game. So I think he just understands the game and knows when his race is strongest.
Knows the game he has to play. Okay.
Yeah.
This I like both those answers, but let's look at the 2 other Protosses that stick out in my mind as Protosses that are basically really solid and always doing well are Parting and Rain. So let's go through those 2. What do they have? Because they're not like MC. They play very differently. Specifically, Rain, I guess, is the other end of the spectrum. Why is it that he is such a consistent Protoss? He's because I don't think we can name it the same way as MC, where Rain's micro and his killer instinct. It seems like it's something completely opposite.
I think Rain is really good because he's playing Protoss differently than most people, as in that he just relies on his strength in mechanics more than other people. I think he's probably the strongest mechanical Protoss player. So people aren't entirely used to that. But on the other hand, I forgot, who did he lose to in WCS? Circ player?
Jadon?
Jaedong.
Did he lose to Jaedong? Yeah. And I felt
Oh,
that
yeah.
Jaedong was really good at just exploiting the fact that Rain was trying to play a proper macro game and not being as aggressive and, relying on build orders as much to deal damage to the Circ player as other Protoss players, and he got punished severely for that. So I feel like if Rain doesn't mix it up a lot more in the future, he's going to make a lot of bad experiences. Because once again, there's no perfect way to play ZvP, but you have to mix it up.
I also... Go ahead, Harstem.
Okay. I think Rain is really strong, especially, he used to always be very strong in PvT because that's the matchup where he can always play solid. So that was always the matchup where he would excel in. And I guess he kind of, I'm not sure how he always won PvP, but his Blink micro was good and his Blink build order because in Wings of Liberty it always used to be Robo and Blink most of the time, and he always came out ahead of engagement somehow. So I guess also his micro, or at least his Blink micro, was very, very good, and we could see that in his PvP. I'm not sure how he won his PvZs in Wings, and I'm not sure how he does in PvZ nowadays. I mainly watch him for his PvT, which is still probably the best in the world and has been so for a very, very long time.
I feel like Rain is an awesome player. Like, he's really awesome, and I think he would have done better with Predator Zerg because his mechanics are awesome, his builds are awesome. Before StarCraft 2 came out, he was becoming one of the best in StarCraft 1, and he has just awesome mechanics. But like losing to Jaedong or like losing to people in GSL, it's only happening because he is Protoss and because he is bound by having such an all-in race.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Then what about parting? Then I guess we're gonna swing towards MC a little bit more with this one.
Yeah, parting just embraces what Jos was saying is the all-in race, and I think he just feels so comfortable doing that. Like he doesn't care. He's just gonna go kill you, and that's very similar to MC in that regard, I think.
Except his PvT also was very, very macro-oriented for a very long time. I haven't seen him play PvT lately, but he always used to be the guy with the ridiculous high Templar spreads and just lots of cannons in the late game, especially good flanks with Zealots even. I think him together with Rain kind of made PvT the way it is nowadays with high Templar lines going back like basically tank lines. So if you lose one, there's still going to be another one, and high Templars coming in from the back, from the side, even in prisms you see nowadays. So I think it mainly was about PvZ where he owned a lot. I can't actually remember his PvP games. But yeah, PvP and Wings. Yeah, I think PvP and Wings was very one-basey anyway, so you can't really say too much about that.
I think Parting has like the best builds PvP in my opinion. He's like the Protoss I copy every single build from. But all right, some pretty interesting stuff about Protoss and PvZ, I would say. Any other thoughts on that before we jump to our final subject of the day?
I think we talked a ton about Protoss.
Yeah, we certainly
I think everything's covered.
The Protoss race has been solved. We're all set. All right.
The Protoss problems have been exposed. I don't know about solving them. That's up to David Kim.
Well, we'll see how that goes. All right. Well, let's just jump into this last subject then, which I wanted to talk about WCS Europe some, because I finally have 3 Europeans that all participate. And there's a few different things I want to go over. First off, do you guys think that WCS Europe is the most successful of the WCSs?
Yes.
I would say so, yeah.
Huh?
Definitely.
I heard 2 yeses, 3 yeses. Okay. Now here's a question. In your opinions, and I'm not talking about you, whether it's helping you or not, is it helping the European scene?
I would say yes, in terms of there's more players who can make it to Premier, and I think it's $1,500 just by being in Premier, so that's nice because distributing money a little bit more evenly among pro gamers is a good thing. It makes it extremely hard for people who aren't at the very top to even make a living from StarCraft 2. if the prize money is just in top 4 and top 8 of big tournaments, because you're not going to get there for a long time.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. WCS is also another reason it's very good, is because it's not, except for the early invites, there are no other invites anymore. So if you're gonna get in Premier now, you have to qualify, and you have to do it every season again. Same for Challenger. You can drop out of Challenger, and the only one to blame is yourself. And I think that's great. It used to be in the European scene, even Dreamhack, I think in 2011, was invite only, and only since 2012 it started being that you can qualify for it. So yeah, I think that's a great thing, because I used to be the guy that would never get invited and got kind of mad about it. But nowadays it's a lot better with almost all tournaments having qualifiers, and I think WCS helps a lot with that.
Okay.
I think Europe in general has a rich history. Like we've always had the players who could beat Koreans, like mainly Stefano, Nurcio. We've just always in Europe had players who really could take tournaments, and then we've had like awesome tournaments like Dreamhack, who bring a lot of history and consistency with the casters like Apollo and Artosis and and like just a lot of history there in Europe where we really feel like we could compete, and it creates a competitive scene. Whereas in NA, it's always been Koreans that dominated. And I think Europe just in general has had a really nice StarCraft experience. Like we've had a lot of European champions and a lot of European contenders. And the production quality of WCS EU is just really good. I just think, yeah, it's the best for sure.
Well, Red Bull, I mean, compared to the other WCS, but I think what I would really like to see is the same production value that Red Bull is bringing to StarCraft. If like WCS could get to that level, I think it would be amazing.
All right. Yost will be rejoining us in just a moment here. Okay, so now that I asked if it's helping the scene, so for you two guys, is it personally helping your career? Do you feel like your career is doing better now that WCS Europe is kind of the center of what's going on over there? Because obviously everyone's going to have good seasons, bad seasons. There's 3 premieres a year. Is your career doing better for you personally as of WCS Europe coming around? I'm not talking about theoretically, but is it now doing better with those additional hits and whatnot? Or was it doing better before when it was just kind of more random?
It is definitely better for me. It gave me a lot more stability and milestones that are achievable, that actually matter a lot. And you have a lot of chances, as Kevin was saying, throughout the year. Even if you drop down to Challenger, you can get back to Premier next season. And the only thing that is bad for me personally is that the Challenger League is just too spread out. So there's constant WCS on streams constantly. So I think my stream viewership suffered a little bit from that. And I think in general, it leads to a little bit of an oversaturation, that smaller tournaments don't really find any place anymore, because Challenger League is just going on constantly, and WCS after that in Premier League is going to continue. So I think it would be nice to focus down Challenger League to a smaller time frame. Other than that, I'm really happy.
Okay. And Harstem?
Oh, I'm not in Challenger League even. I got knocked out last season, so actually my
Same.
career is doing better, but it's not because of WCS. I think I just got better at the game in general. And
Oh, okay. So, but let's say that WCS hadn't come into existence, and you had gotten this much better with the old format of how esports was in Europe. Do you think you'd be better off in that situation, or as you are right now?
well, I guess it's better because I have another tournament to qualify for, and I have another thing to work to. Upcoming weekend there are Challenger League qualifiers, so I can prepare for that, and it's just fun to prepare for something instead of just playing for nothing, I guess.
But I think a lot has changed, because there used to be NASL, there used to be MLG, there used to be Dreamhacks, there used to be constant competitions all the time, and now there's WCS, and a lot of tournaments are just like well, no, we can't broadcast on WCS times, and it's not worth it for us to run a tournament. So I feel like the scene has narrowed down quite a lot compared to before. I'm not sure if it's a good thing. But if WCS does create like a consistent quality of production and games and quality of the league, then it's probably good. But right now with region lock, with no region lock and everything being so weird, I think the scene is probably worse off than in 2012.
Okay. And for you personally, your career, is it doing better because of WCS EU or worse? Would it be doing better without that being there?
It would be doing better if I got really good results in WCS, but I got eliminated in round of 16 and then dropped out of Challenger League, so it's probably not doing better. And I don't feel like I really have a lot of chances to show my skill anywhere else. So in that regard, it's hard. Like, it narrows down all your focus on really just one competition. Like, it's WCS and it's Dreamhacks. And that's it. And if you don't perform right at that moment, even though you spent weeks and months practicing and you're doing really well, if you don't perform in those series that really matter, you're done. Like, you can't show your skill anywhere else. You can stream, which like is good, but there's not that many people watching streams anymore. So it's just a lot harder. And I feel like with StarCraft 2, the game is so volatile that you need a lot of opportunities to show your skill as a pro gamer, because you might be really good, but you could lose one best of 3 to anyone. So I think the scene overall has become harder than before.
What I feel we need more is tournaments that are disconnected from WCS, to be honest. It has become like that monster that every single competition is about in the end. Like, people are only looking at WCS points nowadays. And I feel that, I mean, maybe we just need to be better at handling that, but it puts a lot of pressure and stress on the players. Before you had a competition you would go to, and it would be a chapter that you just have finished. Like, either you've done badly at the tournament and then you just refocus, go on to the next tournament and try to do better and don't think about your loss so much, or you won the tournament and it's like a milestone in your career. But now you just, if you're not doing well in WCS, you just get more and more depressed by the fact that you see the finish line, you see like the global finals coming up and you're not going to make the cut, and then you feel like you haven't accomplished anything, because this is what it all leads up to in the end.
Yeah, it's all about BlizzCon, and there's going to be what, 1 or 0 foreigners there.
Yeah.
So for guys like us, it's hard. It's hard to get there. It's hard to be good enough to get there. It's hard with the practice on Europe to even be able to compete with them. I personally liked it better last year, but I do feel that it's a huge improvement that Blizzard is actually actively involved into the scene. They have their own tournament now that they're pumping lots of money into, so they are invested into the game. They want to make improvements, and I think in the end that will hopefully lead to a better game. I think tournament structure, things like tournament structure and things like what tournaments are when, who's doing what, is less important than the actual game, the end product. I am hoping personally that the focus will go to how the games are played out, what is boring to watch, what is important to have a competitive RTS esports scene. Like, I hope we will see some changes towards that, because that's what matters in the end to me. Like, having just a competitive game where people who put in a lot of time are rewarded and practice pays off.
Okay. Well said. So my last question about WCS Europe. I'm going to give you the scenario. All right, each one of you is forced to retire forever. You're never going to be a pro gamer again. Sorry, your career is over. That's it. What you did. It's done. But now you're in control of WCS Europe, only WCS Europe, not the other WCSs. What are the changes that you make? Because you're done. Your career's over. What do you do to improve it for everyone else that isn't you, now that you're in charge?
How much money do I have? Like, I'd probably increase the prize pool a bit.
Okay. Okay. You don't have infinity money. You have something reasonable. You know, Blizzard puts in a good amount of money. Maybe they'll give you a little bit more for this.
I think it would be fun to get some money for the people who are in Challenger as well. So there are more people making money out of StarCraft, so that encourages more players to actually try to improve if you want that money. So,
would you flatten the pool more? Like add money plus flatten it more?
I'm not sure about that yet. I thought about it quite a bit lately, but I think the price, like if you're in Premier, you get €1,500 or dollar. What is it? Something like that.
I think it's about $1,500.
It's always dollars, man. It's never euros. That's esports.
Euros are worth too much.
I think that's a pretty good amount if you just make it into Premier and then have for the third place guy in the group have some money, and even if you get kicked out of Challenger, that you don't leave empty-handed, that you at least you achieve Challenger League, congratulations, you have 250 or 150. You can imagine the guys that are quite young, maybe 16, 17. If I could show to my parents, like, Mom, every 3 months I won 150, they would be like, well, I guess gaming is more than just a hobby. You can make some money with it, and he doesn't even have to travel to the LAN events around the country or even to Sweden for Dreamhack. I think they would just be good, just to encourage more players to think about going professional. So we grow our complete continent, just like it is in Korea right now. There are lots of good players. We could have lots of good players in Europe as well, because now it's kind of an elite club that is really good and is making money. And then there's a few people who don't really get anything, and they still play.
They're still good. They're
still good. They're still very good.
I mean, you guys even fell out, and you're two of the top Europeans, as people know. So that's pretty reasonable. I like that idea.
I think there's a lot of people who are there's the best players and they make a lot of money, and there's a lot of people who put in a lot of time and are really good, but they don't see a lot of reward with the current system. But personally, if I could do anything, I would focus on the game itself. I feel like esports is like hyped and everybody is like, oh my god, esports, let's watch this, let's watch League of Legends, let's watch Dota 2. But in the end, I feel like the quality of the game, the skill of the game, it needs to be visible for the general people, like the audience, to see like, oh my god, this guy is awesome. This guy is making moves that are insane. I could never do this. And I would personally just focus on that. I would make the game all about skill, all about moves that normal people can't do. You can only do if you practice a lot and if you're insanely talented. And I would also change casters. I would make casters less about just like making jokes and creating an entertaining show. I would want casters to educate people about what makes StarCraft so beautiful. The little nuances that make games awesome, the little decisions that pro gamers make that wins them games, that are just, for me, when I watch a StarCraft 2 game between two Koreans, I can see like, oh my god, this guy is doing this little thing different than any other Grandmaster Zerg would do on the ladder. And that makes him awesome, that makes him win this game. I would focus a lot on that, and if people could really realize the beauty of the game, I feel like it would always be popular, instead of just like casters telling jokes or casters being popular. And I think, Dan, that you're doing a really good job with that, but the majority of information that is transmitted to the audience is just completely irrelevant and pointless towards the beauty of the game, and I would focus a lot on that, just to educate people on why what we're seeing on the screen is so cool.
I have to back Jos up there a little bit. I definitely agree. There are so many things that are lost on the audience that also lead to much worse discussion in the community, what is imbalanced and what is not. Because sometimes a game is being lost and not the right reasons are being portrayed why that happened. It might have been, first of all, there's too many generalizations in casting. Often they say this happened and then he lost because of this, when in reality there were so many factors that led up to that moment, that not suddenly Immortals are overpowered because he lost to the Immortal push and didn't have even though he had like 20 supply more, and it wasn't just the concave that he could have improved. No, it was every single decision he made from minute 1 to minute 10 that led up to that moment. And it would be cool if we had a little bit more detailed analysis of the games. That's definitely something I'm missing, because you feel so like every programmer has watched his own games sometimes if there's VODs, and you feel so unrewarded if you watch a game and you think, okay, now this moment is coming up where I do something really cool, and then wait a second, they're like, not really, they don't even mention that.
There are times where you're making game-changing moves,
yeah.
and the observer misses the move, and they just talk about random crap that is going on. I feel like if people really understood everything, and if people understood StarCraft the same way we all do, everybody would love StarCraft too, but they don't. They watch League of Legends because, you know, it's nice and it's free to play and people play it, but if people understood StarCraft the same way we do understand StarCraft, and the same way we watch replays, and the same way we analyze games, the game is amazing. It's beautiful. Every second there's a decision, and I think it's esports. It's admirable and it's great and it's skillful, but the problem is, how do we transfer all this knowledge that we get from playing 40 games a day for 7-8 years in a row that make us understand the game this way to like the casual player that plays the single player and plays a couple games online and is in Bronze League and doesn't understand the game in the same way. That, like, I still feel like StarCraft should be the front runner in esports, but it's not, because people don't have the same kind of understanding of the game and appreciate it the same way we do. And I think that's the biggest problem in esports right now for StarCraft 2. And I would love to improve that.
Did you ever consider possibly becoming a caster at some point to help with that? Because the thing is, most casters don't have like 15 years of pro gaming experience behind them to be able to explain how beautiful the game is.
That's hard, because casters are popular because they're social, like they're funny people, and they're people, and people are players because they escape from the social world and just want to play games all day. So that's like a interesting thing that's hard to really, as a player, you can't really just jump in and be like, well, I'm going to be really funny, and then I'm also going to like explain the game, and I'm going to get people to love me. Like, you are an amazing player because you are a not social person. You want to play games instead of talk to people. So it's hard to, I don't know, it's just hard.
I think Todd does it really well.
Todd is, Todd is really,
I love watching Todd.
Yeah, he really points out a lot of things others don't.
But even then, he mainly only talks about Protoss. Like, he doesn't have as much knowledge about the other races. And I think it's very hard for casters to know that much about all the other races. The same way that Todd only knows about Protoss as much as he does. And on top of that, being extremely funny, or at least I think it's extremely funny.
Fair enough. It's good points, all. Harstem, did you ever consider becoming a caster? Seems like you're kind of coming up as far as personalities in the community over there.
Nah, I don't want to be a caster. I like playing too much.
Year of Harstem. It would only really be the year of Harstem if Harstem was the main caster for every event. That would be the year of Harstem, man.
I don't like. I think casting or doing talk shows or whatever, it's fun, but that's not why I'm here. Or getting the sick caster money. Like, if I would have wanted to get a lot of money, I probably would have gone to university. I would have made way more than I'm doing right now. It's because I like playing the game every day. So I'm not going to switch to caster anytime soon.
Okay. Well, one day, I hope all three of you become casters. I'd love to listen to you talk about the game more often.
Well, you know exactly what's going on. Like, I know you play the game a lot, Dan, but you know, like, a lot of people just, even when you're casting with other people, you have to realize they just don't see the same kind of things that you see.
It's why I'm saying there might need to be more pro gamer casters.
Viewer had the same understanding. Could you imagine anyone else choosing to watch League of Legends over StarCraft? Could you imagine that? Well, if they knew exactly what you knew?
Of course not. I can't even imagine it without that, because like StarCraft is so deep. As soon as you like touch it, you're like, oh my god, this is the tip of the iceberg, and it goes so deep. Why would I ever devote my life to anything but StarCraft? At least for me, that's the way I look at it.
It's for me, and I am hoping that eventually people see that. But it's hard because how did they see that without playing 30 games a day for 7 years? Because
They have to be brave. They have to be brave is the thing. A lot of people just touch the iceberg like, ooh, that goes way too deep. And then they go do something else, some other esport or something.
Isn't that kind of the charm of HomeStory Cup? That there's just 3 guys that know a ton about the game, talking about it with each other. Like we would when we were watching a tournament together in a players' lounge or something. We're like, well, he should have done this different. Or if we could just have 3 guys like that on the couch of HomeStory Cup, or 2 guys sit, talk with each other about the game, like they know everything. It would be amazing to watch. I think that's the reason why people enjoy watching HomeStory so much, on top of the crazy things that happen. But
I tell you what, I have one-man parties every HomeStory Cup, where I sit there. I don't invite anybody over. I'll invite people over for IEMs and stuff, but I sit alone and just stare at that screen for HomeStory. I love it, man.
That's no excuse, man. You should just take a flight and be there.
Yes.
I know. I want to go to one of those.
Be
so
at
bad.
HomeStory Cup, man. It's the best.
Right. I'll try to come to the next one. Does anyone have any closing thoughts on anything? Because I think we've pretty much done it. We've been on for an hour and a half. This discussion has been completely badass. We couldn't even hit a commercial because this has been a lot of fun.
I have a question for WCS. Don't you find it very hard to find proper Terran practice on EU? I think I'm fine with other Protoss players because Kaz, Lucifrod, and Happy don't actually practice that much in custom games. And I find it very hard to find proper practice with Terrans. I have a lot of Zerg friends, I have a lot of Protoss friends, but I think it's very hard to find Terrans to play with me. I think now that Bunny is getting good, or well, he is actually really good, I can practice with him, and I sometimes play with Lucifron, but like Happy is untouchable.
The thing is, the thing
so
in CVT is, in CVT you don't really need custom training as much though, because we don't really need to talk to a Terran player because there's so much mechanics. And I'm actually happy about my CVT training because there's Happy, Lucifron, and 42 who just constantly hit that ladder button. So I think it's not as big as an issue for Zerg, is it?
I think it's an issue for Zerg if you're not at the level of TLO. If your MMR is on Europe server is slightly below TLO, all you get is Zerg and Protoss. Like on my Smurf account, I have 61 games against Protoss, 46 games against Zerg, and 15 games against Terran.
Whoa.
If I am streaming, I want to play ZvT and I want to play ZvP. Like, I want to play ZvT the most because then I get to show off my mechanics and I get to feel good about what I'm doing because I like mechanics and that's what I like about games. But it's impossible to find Terran opponents on the Europe server. And then if you do find Terran opponents, they're going to not 3CC, they're going to 1-base you and go gas first and make Hellions and run them into your main. So I feel like getting ZvT practice on Europe right now is very difficult, and I totally understand you, Kevin. I wish I would get more practice against Terrans because I want to practice my mechanics, and I appreciate mechanics, and I want to improve them. But all I get is ZvZ, and it's like Ling Bailing Wars, and I wish there were more Terrans in Europe. People should switch to Terran. It's the best matchup. ZvT is best.
Do I need to come back?
Yeah, switch to Terran.
Maybe I can practice Terran with you.
Is it time for you guys to start forming more practice groups? Because it seems like most of the world just hits that ladder button over and over.
Oh, yeah.
In StarCraft 1, you remember we just played customs like non-stop until the Koreans got up.
Honestly, I think Battle.net 2, I mean, obviously, Battle.net 2 was just so bad. It's such an anti-social kind of medium. As a programmer,
man.
First of all, not just barcodes. Okay, let me point out everything that is anti-social about Battle.net 2.0, especially for programmers. First of all, the fact that anybody can message me, which makes me need to enable the function that only my friends can message me. So suddenly, if I play against somebody good, but I don't know him, he can't message me unless I add him. But then my friends list is so small for some reason that I can't add anybody I want to add. So we can literally not communicate with each other because if I do not disable the fact that anybody can message me, people just get flooded with messages, obviously. And second of all, we still don't have any sensible chat function in Battle.net that isn't just single people. We can't make any, we don't have any groups, or like, we do have groups, but they're very inconvenient. Why don't you just give us a chat channel? I mean, we wanted to have that for
chat channels. God, it would be so awesome.
Yeah.
What if it? I know. Imagine if it was just the StarCraft 1 BattleNet. How awesome would that be? We just all
Yeah.
go to Artosis on US West
We
and
have
just
like a
chill there
secret
and
channel
ban
with all the
everybody.
gamers, and people just go there. And right
Yeah,
right now, when I'm laddering, I feel so much negativity. Like when I'm streaming and I'm laddering, I'm on my LiquidRet account and I play barcode, barcode, barcode. And when I play them and I win, they don't GG. And when I lose, I feel bad. So like the whole laddering experience is just like a negative experience for me. I just sit there in my chair getting angry because I'm either losing and I don't know who I'm losing to, or I'm winning and I don't know who I'm beating. So it's just like I'm playing barcode after barcode and people are just being negative. And it's so different at real life events. Like when you're at Bucharest, you sit there with all your pro gamers, everybody's nice, you talk about the game, and you have a good time. Like you have a social connection, social bond. But on Battle.net, when you're laddering, you are interacting with the same people you're interacting with at offline events, but all you get is negativity. Like you beat someone, they don't GG, you just leave. It's a
Yeah, and
barcode.
the worst
Big
part
deal.
is if you know the barcode and you know that person. And then he just like is completely bad manner to you because he's behind he's anonymous, and people just act so differently when they think you don't know who they are. And the fact that we do have barcodes is really sad and horrible. And one thing to counteract that, I think, is why do we have to show build orders? Like in custom games, you now can hide build orders. Just give anybody the function to hide build orders. Come on, there's enough material for people if they want to like look up builds of like good players. They can just go online, watch replays, watch VODs. But the fact that you can just access anybody's match history just makes you want to hide, right? So just give us an option to disable that.
Ladder history being hidden would be really good. Then
Yeah.
people would actually play on their real accounts, and you would know if you're playing somebody that you like, and you could chat a bit, and you could say, "How's your day been? Like, how are you doing? You know, you want to play some custom games after this fucking ladder game." But right now, it's like you're playing a barcode. It's like, okay, you're a barcode. I fucking hate you. I don't know who you are, but I hate you anyways.
You're that level 32 barcode I'm playing against who cheesed me 3 times in a row. And also just give every Grandmaster player the option to message other Grandmaster players. Just override the function that only people who are in your friends list can message you. I think that would be the easiest way to overcome, that communication block. Because if somebody is flaming me, I can still, squelch him, just block him. So that wouldn't be an issue, I think.
That list fills up too, though. You got to be careful about that. When I was playing on the NA server, still, I found out there was a limit to the people you could block.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, any other thoughts, guys?
That was actually a depressing, turn we took here, I think.
Yeah.
But it's good.
It
needs to be said.
Laddering is so hard. Like, you're supposed to play 10 hours a day to compete with Koreans, but every hour is just depressing because you're playing barcodes and they're all mean to you.
Yeah.
Everybody's mean.
How many games of ladder do you guys play compared to?
Way too much. Way too much. Probably 90% ladder.
Really?
Yeah. On like 2 accounts, and then 10% of it custom games. But I'm stupid. Like, it's really, really stupid. Actually, when I was doing really well in WCS Season 1, I was playing much more custom games. And I think that probably was the reason for that.
I can maybe check.
Custom games really help. I feel like when you play ladder, you play a different race and a different map every game. When you're playing custom games, you're playing the same race and the same map, and you can actually really improve. And also the like resume from replay option, nobody uses that. But you could
isn't that
you
weird?
could jump into a game where you make a different decision and you could actually see like, is this going to work? Is this going to affect the end result of the game?
Did they fix it now?
Nobody is using that. I don't know.
Did they fix the fact that if you press space cam, it's not centered?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I actually use it quite a bit in practice, but the annoying thing is that it gets very frustrating that you have to load up your replay every time. Sometimes I want to do, when I'm doing a certain pressure build or all in against Zerg, I want to do the same fight like 10 times in a row.
Yeah.
Then I have to load up, like after 5 times of loading up the replay to the 8-minute mark, I'm like, oh, well, whatever, I'll just go ladder or something. Because it takes so much time because the clicking forward in replay still is 8 times speed, so it doesn't matter anything. And I think the best thing would be if you could resume from replay, and then once you're done with the fight, there would be like a special pause button, and you could go back into the replay menu from which you just loaded, then just back up again to the same time and do the fight again. Or see, you can also test build orders with that or something. But right now I use it quite a bit with my teammates, but no one else wants to use it because it's just too much trouble to go through.
It's a bit annoying. I really thought that people would use that resume from replay a lot more, and I do wonder how much like the Korean Kespa teams might be using that when they find like a really sick build or something like that. You know, I would think especially for Protoss players it would be used a bit more too.
Yeah, no, I use it quite a bit, but there's not many people that want to use it. Especially Terrans don't want to use it because they don't feel it's very necessary for them. I'm not sure why.
I feel like it would be best for Protoss though, like practicing your all-ins or like practicing hitting your 2-base and microing correctly. Looks like we lost TLO here. Not sure what happened with that. Hopefully he'll be back in a moment. I guess from here we'll start to clean things up. The overlay got all screwed up now. Rhett's not on camera. Well, I mean, I feel bad TLO's not here to do this, but I guess let's start to give some shout-outs at least. Harstem, why don't you go ahead and start?
Well, I'd like to shout out all my team, my sponsors, MSI, Steel Series, ISO, and Winamax. Yeah, my friends, my family, my lovers.
So many.
So many. Special shout out for them. I hope you enjoyed me being on this show. And thanks for having me on.
It certainly was a blast. Thank you so much for coming on. Rhett, some shout outs?
For me, also my team, of course, and my sponsors. The StarCraft community for going strong, keeping on strong, and all my fans, of course.
Yeah. That it?
That's it.
You want to give a shout out for TLO?
Of course, TLO. I mean, he's a great player.
Well, I mean, like, he's on your team, so maybe
he would probably thank his team as well, the sponsors,
They do it with a German
App
accent?
Factory. I don't have a German accent. Ich kann Deutsch reden, though. Ich kann Deutsch reden. I could talk German.
Yeah,
but I can't do a German accent.
Well.
Who else would he thank? I don't know. His brother, the big one.
Yeah, the big one.
He analyzes all his opponents for him.
Oh, nice.
He has a moderator chat. He would thank everybody in this moderator chat. I don't know who else he would thank.
His fans, his friends.
Yeah, definitely his fans.
His many fans.
He'd probably thank you two guys for being on the show and talking about StarCraft with him quite a bit. And Nazgul, he runs Team Liquid. Thank him.
Nazgul does a great job.
He'd probably thank his sports coach guy.
Robert?
Yeah, Robert. Probably thank him as well.
Does he have any pets? Like,
I don't think he has a pet, actually. Because he just got his own place, right? So I don't think a pro gamer in their own place would keep a pet. So probably not going to thank any pets.
Probably the guys in Twitch chat.
Yeah, the guys in Twitch chat. They're the gun run, of course. Anyone who doesn't think the gun run is a terrible person. So, all right. Well, there's TLO shoutouts for me, guys. I really want to thank all three of these wonderful Europeans. Oh, there's TLO. Hold on. Now we can actually get his shoutouts and see how quickly. All right, TLO.
Wait, shoutouts?
TLO, we're in the shoutout section.
Okay.
Give us your shoutouts. We try to do it for you. I want to see how close it is.
Okay, sure. Shoutouts to Shiny Things, Razor, Barracuda, as well as Twitch. And thanks for you for having us, Dan. And, you know, if you guys want to watch my stream, you who are watching, then I'm probably going to be streaming later on twitch.tv/LiquidTLO. And also going to be playing in the Fragbite tournament. That's going to be starting at 6:30 European time. So check that out.
2 hours.
Is that all your shoutouts?
Yeah, I think that's it for now.
Oh, wow. We thought TLO was a lot nicer with his shoutouts than he really was, guys. Just throwing that out there. We thanked everyone for you.
Oh,
Well, that's
well,
okay.
thank you Dan, and thank you Jos and Kevin and everybody who's watching.
Yes.
I'm not good with shoutouts. They seem
That's
so.
okay.
Okay.
You'll be able to work on them more in the future.
I just try to be nice, you know, in conversation rather than in the ending. Endings make me sad.
It's only goodbye for now, TLO. It's never the final goodbye.
But we don't
when
talk.
it is, you don't know it.
We don't talk enough though. Then we need to talk.
Well,
more.
I normally talk a lot. I didn't want to like railroad you guys with my craziness, but you guys like were so good. I was having a good time learning and listening and stuff like that. So thanks you guys a lot for coming on. The EU time, I'm going to try to do a lot more metas in the European time zones because there's so many great pro gamers to talk to like these three, and I'm sure I'll have all of you on again at some point. It was truly a blast. Thanks for coming on. And of course, big cheers to Simpatico, Simon, who does this show, all the production, stuff like that. And my sponsors, TT Sports and iBuyPower. So guys, thanks so much for watching. And Meta will be again next week, same time. Yes, I don't think I have any work on Thursday. So same time, same place, I do believe. Thank you much for watching, and we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
Pros always want to have gear that's exactly fitted to their needs.
Something I've always dreamed about doing is using my experience as a gamer to make gear for people like me.
We're working with TT Esports to make the exact mouse, keyboard, and headset that we've always wanted to use.
When you're doing anything that you love to do, the tools that you're using matter the most.
We're designing these products from scratch to make sure that your gaming experience is completely seamless. The gear I use to play the game
are the tools I use to win.